If you haven't cultivated a state of worthiness within you, an experience like this just feels like coincidence. It just looks like a coincidental coming together of timing of two people reaching out, one saying one thing and another saying another. If you don't have a sense of worthiness cultured within you, you can't see the connection. This is why worthiness is so important. Welcome to Worthiness Wednesday. I'm Perry Gruber, the Enlightenment Guy. For over a decade, I've helped people master their mindsets so they can get lives they love and get results without the burnout or the hustle. And true to all Wednesdays, today I'm going to talk about worthiness. Typically what I do in these Worthiness Wednesdays episodes is I talk about an experience with a client's experience. Unscripted, unfiltered. But this time, I should also add that I also anonymize the individual so you can't tell who they are. After all, who they are is not really important. What's really important is the experiences they have, which illustrate the powerful possibilities that are available when you live your life positively focused. Rather than sharing a client's experience today, I want to share something that happened with me over the last 2 weeks. Something that was really profound because it showed me, and it's a great illustration of how the universe is loving me and supporting me and offering me always opportunities to improve my vibration, thereby aligning with the future probable realities containing everything I want so that I can live a life of effortless manifestation. It's so funny that I just said those words, effortless manifestation, because just before I started this recording, I had resolved to create another Worthiness Wednesday about what effortless manifestation means and what it looks like. Most people believe that it's not possible to effortlessly to manifest, to create what you want with no effort on your part. And yet, that's what this practice promises. So maybe next week or the week after, I'll have another video up in the Worthiness Wednesday series that talks specifically about effortless manifestation. I think I'm also going to do a 101 blog on that subject too, because it's so important. Anyhow, let's get to this marvelous manifestation that happened over the last 2 weeks. Some context to begin. I have another website and blog called the Transamorous Network, transamousnetwork.com. I had been running that website for many years, and that website is primarily designed to help trans-attracted men find freedom and power in their trans attraction and help transgender women predominantly, but all kinds of trans people, also find freedom and empowerment in being transgender. That website actually is doing much better than Positively Focused, even though I'm not focusing on the Transamorous Network. But I think that's because it's doing so well because there are so many people who are agitated and interested in the phenomenon of trans attraction. So I started running that blog, and it was very successful in the beginning because, of course, I was focused in a very particular way in running that blog. I was focused in a positive frame. However, I don't know if you know trans people, but a lot of them are deeply insecure and constantly seeking validation outside themselves, often not getting it, and thereby becoming even more insecure, especially with regard to their transness. And so when those type of people encountered my website, they would often respond with very negative, and sometimes not so negative, but still negative comments on my writings. Over time, I had developed belief momentum that had me thinking I could, or believing that I could convince these insecure trans women to embrace their trans gender status as something worthy of their appreciation rather than something worthy of their displeasure. It was a difficult thing to try to accomplish because, true to the positively focused framework, you can't create reality for another person. That person is a free being with free will, able to create any reality they want through their thoughts and beliefs. And so these transgender people were creating disempowering realities that did not match or include things that they want. So when they heard me through my blogs talking about how they can have any reality they want if they simply examine their thoughts and beliefs and change them, and thereby come into alignment with the probable future realities in which all they want is there, they would react negatively. They would have what I call a belief confrontation. Now, a belief confrontation is something that I detail quite specifically in the Universe 101 video I did some time ago. So you can go back there and listen to that to find out what that's about. I'll be creating a glossary, just like I said. I'll be creating a glossary that will include some of these words, all of these words, these concepts as well. So these transgender women would have these belief confrontations and send me sometimes really nasty, sometimes just negative comments on my blogs about how messed up my perspective was and how wrong I was. And over time, over those 10 years or so of running that blog, I developed a momentum, a belief that I had to convince these people. Now, like I said, you can't create another person's reality. And so if in their reality, they hold beliefs that are contrary to what you believe, you are not going to be able to convince them that your beliefs are more valid than their beliefs, because their beliefs, just like your beliefs, are creating realities consistent with them. And so for the transgender women, it is true that transgender women are oppressed. It is true that there are many people fighting against them being seen as women. It is true that there are a lot of men who use them or fetishize them. It is true that there's an entire political part, at least in the United States, political wing that is out to get them. It is true that there's a president currently in the White House that is out to get them. And so this is all true for transgender women, but it's not the absolute truth. It is not a constant of the universe. Nevertheless, when I tried to convince them to see a more positive version of their life experience, the more I tried to convince them, the more they would push back. So I developed a strong momentum of pushing against these people. And the more I pushed, this is so good, the more I pushed, the more negative trans women would show up attacking me. What you resist, what you push against, persists and gets bigger. So last year in December, after giving myself a clue, realizing that there was going to be no way I was going to be able to change these women's mind. In fact, by December, there were so many trans women that were against me. It was like overwhelming. I decided to stop working on the Transamorous Network. I totally stopped every activity other than maintaining the blog's presence. In April, so that's December, January, February, March, April, 4 months later, something miraculous happened. And the reason why it happened is because I had stopped pushing. I found stillness on the subject of trans attraction, transgender women, and my website. And as a result of finding that stillness, the momentum I had of pushing against subsided. And as that momentum subsided, some really interesting things started to happen. I started receiving emails from that website of people who were interested in finding out more. But the people who were writing me now were not transgender women. They were cisgender women who were concerned about their husbands potentially being trans-attracted. They were trans-attracted men eager to find out more about their trans attraction and live a life consistent with that. And the more I talked with these people, the more I began to realize that I had done something pretty phenomenal. I had changed my belief momentum and thereby moved into a probable future reality where that website was causing me to interact with people who were much more in line with what I was offering than what was happening before, back in December. So fast forward to early this month. By now I had 2 clients who had come through the Transamorous Network and are now clients that I'm working with. And while I was working with them and my other clients, I received another response from the Transamorous Network blog. Because things were going so well since April, I decided to post just a couple of blogs talking, specifically addressing concerns that wives would have and concerns, or I was talking about the successes that some of my trans-attracted men clients were having. And in September, earlier this month, a trans woman reached out. This is so good. She was complaining about this one article I wrote where a trans-attracted man was on the down low in his marriage. His wife had found out, and she was complaining to me about what she was going to do. And the trans woman who responded to that comment or that story was complaining about this person lying and saying that if this guy would just stop lying and be truthful, there would be no problem. So this started a correspondence between me and this transgender woman that was actually quite amicable. It was clear to me that she had some awareness of energy and the fact that we are eternal beings and was communicating from that perspective, but she still held on to disempowering beliefs about transgender women and trans-attracted men. And the more I talked with her, the more I could see how she was coming more from the latter than the former. She was coming more from her disempowering stories than her empowering stories about energy and the fact that we are all eternal energy beings. So after 2 very lengthy exchanges, which again were very cordial, something phenomenal happened. This is where this story gets really good. Someone had scheduled a free one-on-one through the Transamorous Network website. This person, who I looked up later, turned out to be a medical resident and also had deep experience with clinical psychology. She also happened to be transgender. She reached out to me because she is planning to get gender confirmation surgery. That's bottom surgery, for those of you not in the know, where they turn a penis into a vagina. She was getting ready to pursue that surgery in spring of next year. And after reading, she said, 10 or 20 of my blog posts, she wanted to know more about my approach and whether or not my approach can help her. By this time, I had been fully corresponding with the woman who had commented on my blog. Let's call her Janet, and we'll call the medical resident Nancy. When I had received the free one-on-one request, I thought to myself, this person, because they're in medicine, particularly clinical psychology, probably is not coming to me to become a client because they're steeped in science, the scientific method. And the scientific method and spirituality tend not to be very compatible. So I thought that she was coming to me to talk with me about the differences, or maybe explore some sort of research that she was doing, and she just wanted to check in with me and see how the spiritual approach would address it or something like that. But when we finally got on the call, there was such a resonance between her and I and what I was sharing with her that our call lasted more than an hour. Typically, my free one-on-ones are only 30 minutes, and I'm pretty rigorous about that. But there was something about her that had me wanting to pour more of myself into her. Again, I don't know if I said this earlier so far, but Nancy, the medical resident, is transgender. So after the one-on-one that I had with her, which was thrilling, she decided to become a client. And before we ended our one-on-one, she had already paid me for the full month's of sessions and expects to do so to continue to be a client through the spring when she gets close to her surgery. And then she's going to decide what to do with the surgery. But I think she's going to find so much value in what I offer that she's going to remain a client just as many of my clients do. Anyhow, after this conversation with Nancy, I thought about the correspondence I was having with Janet, and I recognized that this was an invitation of the universe. This was a divine coinciding of two specific yet connected events that were reflecting back to me where I was in my vibrational mix. Now, often with new clients, I talk about how they have one foot in two different camps. For example, one of my clients long ago had one foot in Christian theory and the other foot in the positively focused framework. And when you have one foot in two different camps, you're not very effective or powerful. And so me encountering Janet and also having Nancy show up was showing me that I had an invitation. The universe was giving me an invitation to put both feet in the same camp. And because we all have free will, including myself, the universe wasn't trying to tell me where to put my feet. It was just giving me an invitation. On the one hand, there was Janet, who reflected back to me the old momentum that I had soothed that was beginning to gain momentum again the longer I interacted with her. And on the other hand was Nancy, who was coming to me in full resonance with what I offer, eager to find out more, and becoming a client. So I had these one foot in each of these camps, one the old momentum and one this new momentum that I had developed since I stopped writing my blogs on the Transamorous Network. It was a marvelous, marvelous invitation from the universe. Can you guess which direction I leaned? If you guessed leaning toward Nancy, you're absolutely right. That was the right way to go. If I had continued to communicate with Janet, I would have just re-amplified the old momentum that I had done a successful job in soothing since December. Leaning in the direction of Nancy allowed me to increase the momentum I had begun building when I stopped writing for the Transamorous Network. That amplified my positive momentum. And so I also amplified my positive momentum when I wrote to Janet and told her that I would no longer be communicating with her, after, of course, I explained to her everything that you're hearing now. Here's the thing. We are all powerful creators. You, me, and everyone else on this planet. And we're doing that. We're creating our reality every minute we are existing. I was going to say every minute we're alive, but we're also doing it when our body is sleeping. And the cool thing about us as creators is we have free will. We can put our focus, we can put our attention on in any direction we want. The thing we have to realize, though, is where we put our attention is what's going to get bigger in our life experience. I learned this in a beautiful way over the last 10 months or so. Most recently, with this wonderful seeming coincidence of Nancy showing up in the midst of me corresponding with Janet. And then prior to that, the clients that have come through the Transamorous Network before Nancy, and the wives who had reached out to me, and the trans-attracted men who had reached out to me, eagerly seeking my guidance. Because we have free will, and because we're powerful creators, we can create anything we want. But in order to create what we want, we have to know what we want, and we have to line up with it. And we do so by putting our focus in the direction of what we're wanting. Now, some of you might be listening to this and be saying to yourself, that was some ebonics coming out, that was saying to yourself, well, Perry, Janet coming and Nancy coming, that's just coincidence. And I would agree in this sense. It is a masterful, Janet and Nancy coming in the divine timing that they came was a masterful orchestration of three things: my focus, my deliberate focus, my broader perspective knowing what I want and constantly leading me to it, thereby helping guide my focus, and the universe delivering evidence showing me where I am in any given moment. As I said, Nancy and Janet showing up in the timing that they did was an invitation from the universe for me to choose which direction I wanted to lean. And because I have clarity with regard to reading things like this, not as coincidence, but as the perfect coinciding of events that offer an invitation, I was able to move in the direction of what I want and get more of that. And here's the thing: if you haven't cultivated a state of worthiness within you, an experience like this just feels like coincidence. It just looks like a coincidental coming together of timing of two people reaching out, one saying one thing and another saying another. If you don't have a sense of worthiness cultured within you, you can't see the connection. This is why worthiness is so important. Now, really quickly, worthiness is something you cannot conjure. You can't fake worthiness until you make worthiness. It's something that naturally arises from you when you have recognized over time evidence of the universe and your broader perspective constantly showering and guiding and supporting you to have everything that you want. And the more evidence you find of that as you live your minutes, hours, and days, and weeks, and months, and years, the more evidence you put in your basket, the more you come to realize the actual fact of the matter, which is you are at the center of the universe, and the universe is blessing you with everything that you want, but you have to line up in order to see that. And when you do line up, you see evidence of it everywhere. And when you see evidence of it everywhere, you begin to come in naturally to your worthiness. Earlier this week, I was talking with a client about the difference between faith, trust, and knowing. Faith is something you have to conjure when you don't have evidence. Faith is belief in the absence of evidence. Trust is something that develops as you experience repeated experiences of the thing that are consistent enough to build trust within you. That's what trust is. Trust is a kind of faith born of evidence over time. Knowing is different than faith and way different than trust. In knowing, you don't need to trust, because in knowing, you have so much evidence. It's just known to you that this is the way it is. And that's where I stand, in knowing. I stand in knowing with regard to how the universe works. I stand in knowing with regard to the spiritual dynamics that underlie how physical reality works. I stand in knowing that we are all powerful creators having a human experience. But at the core of all of us is pure positive energy that cannot be anything more than joyful and excited and enthusiastic about what's unfolding. And because of this knowing, I feel a deep sense of worthiness, because in every experience I can see how the universe is supporting me and leading me and guiding me. And so when you've come into a sense of worthiness, which you cannot conjure and you can't fake, it has to develop over time, you begin to see what would have been perceived by you as coincidence, as divine unfolding, divine guidance. That's what I saw in the coincidence of events that showed up as Nancy and Janet. Both of these people were angels, emissaries of the universe, assisting me in seeing how well I'm doing as I have mastered the practice of deliberate creation. You can have this too. Your worthiness is inherent. It's not something you have to create for yourself. It's already there. You just have to build a basket of evidence that shows you that you're worthy, and then your worthiness will emerge. You don't need me to show you how to do it, but if you'd like me to show you how to do it, feel free to reach out in the comments, or send me an email, or contact me through positivelyfocused.co. In the meantime, happy Wednesday. See you in the next video or in the comments.